Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another fragrance review. Thank you so much for watching my videos. This time we're going to be taking a look at a fragrance from the designer house of Tommy Hilfiger. This is on a 2010 release. This is part of a duo of fragrances and it goes by the name of Loud. So like I said, it was released in 2010. There is a men and a women's version of this fragrance available, and the perfumers for this fragrance are Aurelien Guichard and Yann Vasnier. Now both of those perfumers work for the firm Givaudan, and what happens is many companies, big companies like Gucci and Tommy Hilfiger, they will enlist the help of one of these firms in hiring perfumers that will eventually satisfy or fulfill a concept for a fragrance that they have in mind. So Tommy Hilfiger wanted to make a rock and roll themed or rock and roll inspired fragrance, naming it Loud, so they decided to enlist these perfumers' help. Now these perfumers have worked with each other before. Aurelien Guichard is responsible for fragrances like Andy Warhol Silver Factory from the House of Bond No. 9, as well as Chinatown from the House of Bond No. 9, and he has also done Versace's Eros, whereas Yann Vasnier, I think one of his most notable compositions is one from the House of Tom Ford, part of his private blends called Lavender Palm. Now with this rock and roll inspired fragrance, the whole reason behind that is that Tommy Hilfiger is one of those brands that's kind of synonymous with classic. Whenever you think Tommy Hilfiger, you think of their classic fragrances. Of course, Tommy Hilfiger is not a brand that has been a stranger to the perfume industry. They have 47 fragrances in their online database, and with the earliest one being released in 1995, the most recent one being released in 2013. So with this 2010 release, what they wanted to do is kind of break away from that classic image. They wanted to attract a younger generation of consumers. They wanted to appeal to a younger demographic. So they wanted to take something that the younger generation loves, which is music or rock and roll music, and they wanted to make a fragrance that would embody the passion that is rock and roll. So they decided to go with two notes for this fragrance, or at least two notes that were made available to the general public, those being rose and patchouli. I'm going to let you know exactly how loud I think this fragrance is. But next up, let's take a look at the presentation for Tommy Hilfiger's Loud. Loud by Tommy Hilfiger is available in two bottle sizes, 1.4 ounces and 2.5 ounces. The one that you're looking at here in front of me is the big size, the 2.5 ounce bottle, and this fragrance is only available in eau de toilette concentration. Now this is part of a duo of fragrances, so if you're looking for the men's version, make sure you get the black box and the black bottle. The women's version is like a pink or magenta colored bottle. Now first up, let's take a look at the box, and this is actually a plastic box. It appears to be cheaply manufactured, and that's because it is, but I actually like the purpose that it serves. It's actually supposed to be a sleeve, so when you buy the fragrance, the bottle is inside the sleeve, and over here you have this duct tape pattern looking thing really keeping the box on the inside. This is actually sticky. It has Loud written on the front, and on the reverse side you have the barcode, the lot number, some more information like company info and the ingredients, so on and so forth. But this really does only serve one purpose, and that's really serving as a sleeve. So next up, let's take a look at the bottle. This is where I feel like the real highlight of the presentation lies. So as far as the bottle goes, over here on the front you have the word Loud written right in the middle, the name of the fragrance. And what I like about this is that it looks like a record, like a vinyl record. So you have all of the grooves, but I think that it serves two purposes. I think that when you're looking at the word Loud, the fact that it's blurry on the outsides and more clear, more legible on the insides, makes it look like a speaker on an amplifier that's really reverberating or pounding loud with music. So I think that a lot of time, a lot of thinking, a lot of thought went into this bottle design, and I think that as far as the presentation goes, it was fulfilled. I really like it. So on the reverse side, of course, this is nothing more than a sticker with Loud written backwards. Down here you have the Tommy Hilfiger logo, and then as far as the cap goes, this actually resembles a knob that you may find on a radio or an amplifier with Tommy Hilfiger written here in a circumferential pattern, and the atomizer for this fragrance actually works pretty well. Really nice distribution. It doesn't spray out a lot of juice, but a really nice distribution. And that has pretty much been the presentation for Tommy Hilfiger's Loud. Now, upon initial spray, the first thing you're going to notice about Tommy Hilfiger's Loud is this very traditional citrus opening. Now, I know the only two notes that are formally listed as notes are patchouli and rose, but I do think that there's a bit of citrus working in the opening. Now, I get bergamot. It's a very traditional, very generic, and I know generic is a term that's usually synonymous or associated with bad or not good, or it usually has like a negative or pejorative connotation to it. I don't think that it's necessary necessarily bad. I just don't think that it's very inspiring. I think that if there's one word that I would use to describe this fragrance, it's uninspiring. There's not a lot going on in this fragrance, and I think it just leaves so much more to be desired. One thing that I do like about this fragrance, however, is once that citrus starts to take a back seat in this composition, there's this note of tobacco that starts to come through. Now, I know that tobacco is not listed as a note, and I'm not going to take credit for this, but usually when I review a fragrance, I try to do a little bit of research, possibly look online on different fragrance forums, and I noticed that a couple of people were saying that they get a tobacco note from this fragrance. So when I revisited it and when I smelled it again, I noticed that there actually is a distinct note of tobacco. Now, one thing that I want to get across is that the tobacco note used in this fragrance is of an inorganic or inauthentic nature. It's not a tobacco note like Tom Ford's Tobacco Vanille, where it creates this vivid visual image of what it quite possibly may look like. Think something along the lines of Michael Kors for Men, Spice Bomb by Victor and Rolf. It's a tobacco that is of a synthetic nature, but I think it smells good in this fragrance. Unfortunately, I think that that's the only part of the fragrance that smells good, aside from that brief citrus opening. Once it starts to dry down, this rosy quality starts to come through that I think is not overly feminine. Because it does have a spicy twinge to it, I can detect a little bit of possibly even cinnamon or nutmeg, something sweetening it up in the introduction. And then it quickly dries down to this patchouli dry down that's not herbal nor earthy, nor does it have any other distinct odor profile qualities to it that are worthy of a mention. It just smells very bland, very generic, very perfunctory, very banal, kind of like a work-a-day fragrance. Nothing about it was really ever inspiring, and unfortunately, I hate to speak negatively about a fragrance, but this one really just didn't do it for me. And I don't think that that's the fault of the perfumers either. That may be a fault in the budget that the perfumer was on, maybe the creative direction of the fragrance, or even perhaps possibly even the test group who said the fragrance smelled good. But I think in terms of compliments or complaints, I think this fragrance might actually land you a compliment, and I think that the person who would compliment you would not necessarily be complimenting you because they think your fragrance smells good, but simply because of the fact that they detected that you were wearing a fragrance, or that they acknowledged that you're wearing a fragrance. So have I worn this fragrance outside of testing? No, I haven't, unfortunately. This one just really didn't do it for me. Perhaps there are a lot of people out there who do enjoy this fragrance, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't wear it or you should feel bad about it. I think scent is very personal, but for me, it just didn't really work for me. Now, the bottom line for this fragrance is it's a citrusy fragrance. It opens up with bergamot. It dries down to a little bit of tobacco that's only present for a very while. It has a very ephemeral nature to it. And then it dries down to this patchouli rose combo with this vanillic and coumarinic sweetness. It kind of has this balmy quality at the same time, but it dries down to a very familiar, sweet, almost manufactured dry down. I didn't like this fragrance, but I'm going to let you know what I think as far as the rating goes. Let's take a look at that next. First up, we have Uniqueness and Overall Smell, and Loud by Tommy Hilfiger earned from me a 3 out of 10. I know it's a low mark, but as I said before, I think that there's something about this fragrance that's very uneventful, very uninspiring, and it leaves a lot to be desired. The only thing that kept me from giving this fragrance a lower mark as far as overall smell goes is the fact that I actually do enjoy the bergamot and the tobacco combo. Unfortunately, it does sit in the background quite early on in this fragrance's development, so for that I gave it a 3 out of 10. Next up, we have Longevity, and this fragrance earned for me a 5 out of 10. This is an eau de toilette concentration, so 4 to 6 hours is to be expected, and I usually get 5 hours from this fragrance, so I'm going to give it an average score of a 5. Next up, we have Projection, and I gave this fragrance a 4 out of 10. This fragrance really radiates about a foot away from you, and it really only projects for about an hour, even 2 hours on a good day, but I feel like that's below average projection, so I give it a 4 out of 10. Next up, we have Versatility, and this fragrance earned from me a 7 out of 10. I actually bumped up the grade a bit. Now, in terms of versatility, I think that the affordability of this fragrance really allows you to wear it on quite a number of different social scenarios. I think that this would make a great everyday casual fragrance. I think that in terms of a night out, I think this fragrance would also work as well because of its vanillic and coumarinic dry down. I think the sweet attributes would allow it to work well as a night out fragrance. I just don't think it would work well as a semi-formal or formal formal wear fragrance because I don't think that the composition is really going to allow you to leave a good impression on other people. Also, in terms of seasons, I think that this is a year-round fragrance, and I think that they actually did make a fragrance that I think young people could enjoy. Aside from that, I just don't know if they'd be able to enjoy it or if they would actually like wearing it. But in terms of versatility, I think that this works very well in a number of different climate conditions and social scenarios, so I give it a 7. And last up, we have presentation. I already told you what I felt about that. I actually liked the presentation. I give it an 8 out of 10. And then that brings this fragrance to an overall rating, or an average score, of 5.4 out of 10. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for watching. That was my review of Loud by Tommy Hilfiger. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please feel free to get in contact with me. I will try to get back to you as soon as possible. Also, if you own Tommy Hilfiger's Loud, or if you've smelled it, please let me know what you think by leaving a comment down below. Again, this has been Steven with another fragrance review from Red Lessons. Thanks for watching.